Good evening and welcome to TalkSports, our weekly program where we meet and discuss with the movers and shakers in sports, the sportsmen, sportswomen, administrators, coaches, whoever involved in sports. We discuss issues as it relates to sports and sports development. On this week's program, we head to the beautiful island of Grenada and we speak to first of all, it's no stranger to the program. And no doubt, I think the last time officially he was on this program would have been a few months ago. And he is the president of the Grenada Football Association, Mr. Cheney Joseph, who, by the way, was just recently elected first vice president of the Grenada Olympic Committee. But Mr. Joseph's role this evening is to speak all about the issues relating to football, particularly in Grenada. And you have been seeing a lot of social media postings regarding football in Grenada, the lack thereof of football. And Mr. Joseph will give us reasons as to why there is no football being played now, what plans are there to ensure that football probably will resume, obviously because of the pandemic. And then we also heard about the recent decision by the Grenada Football Association. And we are hearing also of other regional football associations are doing likewise, that footballers and officials vying for selection on national teams that regarding football must be vaccinated. So it's a criteria for selection, vaccination. I don't want to say mandated, and that certainly Mr. Joseph will give us all the details about that. Again, the program is coming from Austin, Texas, and let me use the opportunity to welcome Mr. Joseph to the program. Good evening, Cheney. Good evening to you.
Hi, good evening, Mike, and good evening to the viewers wherever they are taking this program.
Okay. First of all, Mr. Joseph, as I indicated in the introduction, it has to do with the lack thereof of football. I think football has been halted, and there was once when I think it was late last year, football was being played. Everyone seemed to be excited, social distancing, especially at the stadium, etc., etc. What has happened since then? Why there is no football, Mr. Joseph?
Well, our season did in fact kick off this year, and we started playing. In fact, we got through the preliminary stage of the conference leagues, 4 conferences, as well as we had gotten to, I think, first round in the Premier League. And then the unfortunate realities hit us in August when there was a spike in COVID-19 in Grenada. As a result of that, the Ministry of Health, the government, had put some measures in place which prevented us from going back out on the field. Although during those times we had 2 national teams traveling out, our U14, our U14 boys and girls, as well as our U20 girls. And they were affected by that. In fact, if I was to speak about the U20 girls, as much as 15 persons, including members of staff, were affected just mere 2 weeks or a week before the team went to Curacao. In Dominican Republic, our U14 boys and girls went out there, and again, we had issues relating to the team being affected by COVID. Sometime in July of this year, Grenada was the envy of managing COVID. In fact, we had 1 death, and we had, I think at the time, I think 1 or 0 cases. And some things happened. I don't want to go into the details as to what really happened and who caused what. But there was seemingly community spread, and that created an alarm, and we went from 1 or 0 to hundreds, and I think even past 1,000. So football was affected, and not just football, sports was affected as a result of that. And we had no choice but to suspend the sport as a result of the decisions made by government and the Ministry of Health.
But you are one who, well, when I'm saying that as in your role as president of the GFA, but I think more so in your private capacity, you have been pushing and advocating for the return of sports, whether it's recreational or whatever. I know more so in terms of football, because there are football competitions, regional and international football competitions, that the national teams, under 20 in particular, will have to compete in. And there's something in terms of getting competition going. Let's talk a little about that, Cheney. Why you think it's the right time for competitive sports, whether recreational or competitive, I should say, should resume?
Well, I'll start with me. I've had the privilege of, for the past 7 weeks, getting up 4 in the morning and hitting the road, trying to feel like a few years back. And I have seen how positive it has been on me.
Yeah, I was saying, by the way, I've been seeing those things. Is that real? Is that real?
Trust me. I'm saying openly, I'm genuinely feeling much better having gone out there. And I indicate to you earlier on, it's been 7 weeks now. I've been on the road from 4 in the morning, getting back home around 6:15, and I'm talking about 2 hours constant walking. Privilege I was, I think, this morning I saw former Grenada open batsman Raphael Cheney, and we did a good bit together. I've seen on the road Cullen Peters, another former national athlete, and Michael Hyacinth, another former athlete back in his day. But I am saying to you that I've seen how positive it has impacted me, just being able to go out there and exercise. And I will say to you, whether or not we accept it, a young person who is active in sport not being able to participate in sport, not because of their own doing, but because there are restrictions, it not only plays on his physical body, but it also affects him psychologically and mentally. And I think one of the ways in which we can ease some of these problems of our young people especially is to allow them for some form of recreation. If I can share with you a little scenario. The Real Old Men are a group of guys over 40 who play football. And the minute time they recognized that it was okay to go back out on the playing field, they started, and I mean, I'm part of that group in terms of a WhatsApp group, and I can feel the excitement there. Just before coming on to your program, 1 or 2 persons have reached out to me and asked, can you confirm when we'll see football again? However, having said that, I think we also have a challenge because we've lost a few weeks well in football, and the other sports such as cricket, track and field, and others who use some of the same fields that we use will also be desirous of starting their program. So we have a little challenge there. But I think when you look at the positive impact sports has on the psyche of young people especially, and even on spectators, I think it was appropriate that we try to get the opportunity to go back out on the field. I want to qualify very early that I was not in possession of the SRO that was the recent SRO that was released prior to my posting last evening. And I must say thanks publicly to the Minister of Health, who reached out to me and provided me with confirmation that sport can resume, and reference, I think it is Article 13 or something of this art, 13.2, which speaks to how sporting associations may resume sports. I will say also that our national teams have been affected because we had to withdraw one of our teams from participation. Luckily, having informed the CONCACAF that we were doing so, the very next day they told us that they were aware of the effects of it on the entire Caribbean. And I think it's the reason why now the Women's Nations League, which is a prerequisite, or sorry, a precursor to the qualification for the Women's World Cup, will now be playing in the first quarter of next year. So many people have been affected. Clubs, every day you see on different outlets, they are crying for the sport to continue. But like I said, we will have some problems because we will have limited fields now, and we will see how the executive go about deciding on how we continue. But I'm glad that sports people can now go back out on the field as of today. And I'm hopeful that we won't have another wave, and for persons who have a love for sport will be able to go out there either to participate or to watch.
But and I'm glad you mentioned also the executive committee has to decide or deliberate or discuss or whatever. But from how you see it as president, how you think in going forward we will see football in Grenada, and more so sports in general, because in many instances football is big in Grenada and played more competitive than probably any other sport. There's track and field, but it's sort of seasonal limited, but football goes way beyond that. So how you see it in terms of going forward? What are the limitations? What are the protocols? What can fans expect, or even footballers to some extent, expect in going forward?
Well, if you would allow me a few minutes on that, because it's a very dicey matter to be exact. First of all, let's look at what are the new requirements internationally to participate in competitions that Grenada, for example, will be participating in. It is highly recommended that persons will have to do excessive tests, -3, game day -3, or travel day -3, those kinds of things. And it's costing a lot just for these tests, whether it is antigen or PCR. In addition to that, though, you will be aware of the fact that the US government, for example, only recently announced that there will be no exemption, and that every person traveling to the US must be fully vaccinated, and there will be absolutely no letting down on that. It means then that for our national teams, all our players who wish to represent the country will also have to be vaccinated. We have already taken the decision, with support from the medical committee, that persons wishing to represent Grenada at the national level must be vaccinated. But I will say to you that it may come the time where, unfortunately, the reality is that even organizers of competitions at the national level, whether it is the GFA, Cricket Association, track and field, the rest of it, we may just have to follow suit and require persons wanting to participate in our competitions must do the same. What that says also is that our clubs are now in a position to also have the structures further improved, because now the clubs may have the chance to say to the players wanting to represent those clubs, who ultimately are not just playing for fun, but wanting to make national teams, that you too should be vaccinated. Now, I want to be clear because I am certain persons listening to your program may be saying, or are you saying there is nothing called pro-choice? Well, yes, there is still going to be pro-choice. You have the choice of vaccinating because you want to be part of an association's event, or you have the choice of not doing so, thus denying yourself the chance. There is nothing saying that if you didn't, you are going to suffer. It simply says, if you didn't, you won't be able to participate. If I can further advise, we have taken on board, after many deliberation, the need for now a COVID-19 compliance officer. So, for example, any national team that is training now, we have an officer or person who is ensuring that all aspects of protocols relating to adhering to COVID-19 regulations is in fact being carried out. I can use, for example, last Saturday, I went to watch the national under-20 team train at the stadium, and the compliance officer walked up to me, and I inadvertently forgot my mask on, and he said to me, "Mr. President, I would require you to put on your mask, or otherwise you would have to leave the venue." And that is the way it's going to go in many places. I mean, not all places, because I see in some of the international countries, people are going to the games, but not necessarily wearing masks. But like I say, the vaccination in particular is something that is going to affect almost every sporting association and individuals in the coming weeks and months.
So are you saying it's just short of a mandate, or is it a mandate?
I will prefer to use the word "it's coming there," and I say it's coming there, meaning the executive took a decision regarding the national team. We have not yet made such a decision regarding persons participating in our competition, but I don't know if, for example, if the GFA is organizing its under 13 competition or its under 11 competition, we can say to the parents that your kids have to be vaccinated. But for our senior competitions, I have the strong feelings that the majority of the executive will be pushing that line, simply because we are seeking to identify the best potential talents locally from amongst our players, and we want almost everyone to have a fair chance to participate. Apart from that, though, I think it's going to come soon. It's going to come very soon, whereby that is going to be part of maybe a requirement for utilization of funds available to us from other people, meaning from our parent bodies. I just have that feelings. Apart from that, too, if you were to check on the emphasis placed on sport by bodies such as the United Nations, the World Health, and the rest of it, they are pushing vaccination as one of the options to save us from, losing our lives. And if they are going to invest in some of these organizations in order to push that message, I think obviously there will be some sort of requirement to benefit from those.
Okay, and looking ahead, Cheney, of football in Grenada and the structure of football as it is, and it has to do with, I know there was some discussion, there was some debate about the structure of football, including the conference league, all these sort of things. What it will be like in terms of a new structure for football in Grenada or under the Grenada Football Association?
Okay, first, let me just say that most time change is always a challenge. And change is a challenge because some people do not want to lose out from what we call the status quo. It is also most obvious to the persons who saw football in the 80s, the 90s, and even early 2000s. And they will say to you that the quality of football currently being played in Grenada left much to be desired. And I will not hesitate in saying that we did try something called the Conference League, but I don't think it achieved its objective. The idea behind the Conference League was to allow for inter-village rivalry from neighboring villages. It was also intended to offset costs associated with teams participating in GFA competition because many of them were suffering from, a lack of sponsorship, the rest of it. However, things have changed since that time. One, FIFA has been given more monies to associations. Two, the Grenada Football Association in particular has been given each of its members monies under the Club Development Fund. In addition to that, we still provide additional opportunities for them through the COVID funds that FIFA gave us sometime last year. And therefore, even in the absence of sponsorship, there is an opportunity for some of these clubs to now utilize that money in a more meaningful way. So, for example, being able to travel to different parts of the country should not be a major issue. We have given those same clubs uniforms, so they do not necessarily have to say that, well, uniform is a challenge. So even in the absence of sponsorship from companies relating to helping some of these clubs, we believe there's sufficient funds available to them, also increased prize money. So there's sufficient reason why I think we have a chance now to revisit what we did, or the experiment, as I would call it, and go back to that type of football where we had the Premier League, the First Division, and the Second Division. I personally, as the president, I have a view, and my view I will make public here. I believe to myself that in order to improve on the quality of football, you must set different categories of competition, and categories in the context that you reward certain teams for their performance. So I believe if we have the Premier League, we should have a division under the Premier League and one under that. So I am suggesting that it is time for all our clubs to agree to go back to when we had First Division, Second Division, Premier League. And if you ask me, I think we can even go to a Third Division, because what we want to emphasize is you play at different levels, and based on your performance, you are elevated. Right now, as we have it, the GFA competition is basically two divisions. You have the Premier League and the conference. The thing about the conference is just based on location. So you have teams from the east side, west side, north side, south side, but it's not bringing out quality. The other thing I want to say also, which is very important, is that it's unfair to a great percentage of our clubs, almost 50% of our clubs, it might be about 40% of our clubs who do not have a say in our council. And that is because of the structure we currently have. So two of the things I am strongly advocating, and I'm looking forward to us having discussions and the clubs agreeing to, is one, revert to what was a successful program. And they say something which I believe now, in hindsight, you should never do. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So I believe we should go back to that type of competition. And I also believe that every single club who's a member of the GFA should be given a chance to physically be in every council meeting to debate on behalf of that club and not have someone else do it.
So am I getting the impression, Mr. Joseph, that there is some sort of, and under the restructuring aspect of it, constitutional amendments come in, or some proposal for constitutional amendments?
Well, within a year of the last constitution review, it was identified that we were having some problems. And as a result of that, many were asking for certain aspects of the constitution change. And like I would say, you don't conveniently look for just the area that's affecting you. You look at the entire constitution and see how it can enhance the association. And so I am hinting you, there was a mandate given to the legal committee, which is chaired by Wayne Francis, to review the entire statute and to ensure that those proposals coming from the clubs and or any other member or members is going to positively impact on the association and its functioning. I am certain that we will have a significant review in the Constitution before the next election. And I'm also certain that those changes will enhance the functioning of the GFA going forward. As I speak about that too, I think one of the things I've consistently said on your programs, there are many people with administrative strength, right, or expertise who have not made themselves available. And I am saying that maybe if we could have gotten some of them in some of these clubs, the administration of the Grenada Football Association, by virtue of the quality of persons coming from club, would also enhance what we do at the executive level. When I say executive, national executive level. So I'm hopeful also that clubs throughout Grenada will seek to get persons who have those skill set to come and support them, and by extension, we benefit from the quality of people representing those clubs.
And talking about that, Cheney, was it a hope that during this pandemic, with still within the pandemic though, that these clubs that you're referring to, or let's call some of them teams as they are now, would have probably find the time to, get do the right thing and transition into what you're advocating for, proper functioning clubs?
Yeah, well, actually, I don't mind if I'm the lone person calling for that. I don't think I'm the lone person, but I've consistently stated since March 2020, I think COVID, people are not seeing it yet, but I think COVID had created so much opportunities. It's about how we embrace those opportunities and use it for positive advancement in sport administration, the game, the rest of it. I've consistently stated and used forums, whether it is social media, WhatsApp, emails, whatever, to encourage these clubs. During these downtime, as we would call it, it's the best time to reorganize. You have persons' numbers in your community, persons you believe might be able to assist in different areas based on this strength or skill set. You have your members who have not been able to go out onto the playing field. You may not have had a council meeting, and when I say council meeting, at the club membership level, you may not have had any meeting with your membership over a long time because we were all out busy and engaged in competitions and otherwise. I will be disappointed if our clubs have not used the last almost 19 months to restructure. Any club that over the last 19 months did not engage its members, did not seek to revive its executive, did not seek to provide some sort of reports to its members regarding funds received from GFA or otherwise, or its own strategic objectives, would have failed the members and the community where that club is existing. So I'm hopeful, and I am not here to assume it didn't happen, but I'm hopeful that's exactly what took place over these last 19 months. Apart from that, what it has also allowed as an opportunity, COVID, we did not put much emphasis on platforms such as the one we're using now. So persons don't have to go sit in a conference room or sit in a community center or in a school classroom to meet with its membership. Most persons have some sort of device that you can access them. And I'm hopeful that the leadership of these clubs would have, in fact, used those 19 months to reorganize, to inform its members of what is happening, and not just sit there hoping for just another GFA competition. As I speak about that, and I often hear, and I say that for young leaders, if there are persons who are seeking to one day become leaders in organization, the easiest thing to do in an organization is to blame. The hardest thing to do is to lead. And I will say to persons, if you are keen on evolving as a leader of any organization, be prepared for the criticism. But the criticism, you should use it for allowing you to be stronger, to be wiser, to learn to listen more, to be able to have some introspection and retrospection, and to be able to advance the views of those people as best as you can to improve on the association. I am certain that the Grenada Football Association has been hearing, whether it is our players, our coaches, those in the general council, the general public. I am certain we have been listening to them, and those persons and their comments, I'm certain in some way or the other we have been able to use it to advance or improve on the way we do things in Grenada, at least from a football perspective. I might be blowing our trumpet, not mine, our trumpet. I believe Grenada Football Association, and I have no apologies for saying so, except told otherwise. I believe the Grenada Football Association has consistently been a trendsetter in terms of decision it has taken and allow for other associations to then follow. And I will say without a doubt, if we are not the leader in such, we are probably amongst the top 2 or 3 associations who's been taking initiatives, especially during COVID, to advance the game. In fact, we were the first association since March 2020 to have a successful virtual annual general meeting. And that in itself was one of a major success, because some people were saying, well, how will it happen? We had over 68 persons in total participating in our annual general meeting last year virtually. We've been able to engage our coaches. We've been able to engage our referees. We've been able to engage some stakeholders. In fact, we've been able to even entertain or to provide information to the general public as a result of that. So there are many positive opportunities available as a result of COVID. I will say to you one last one at this point in time that I have seen, and we have embraced it well as an association. The association is soon going to have its own studio. And when I say studio, not a radio station or television station, its own studio where we will be able to accommodate all of our clubs to help share the message of that club and its activities by engaging them there. We have only yesterday received the approval from the powers that be to allow for our 3rd floor to now be an approved quarantine center. And so our under 20 boys who are traveling tomorrow, when they return somewhere around the 17th of November, we will be able to put them in that quarantine center while they go through the days required, the mandatory days required for quarantine prior to them returning to their respective homes. And as we speak about that, I make reference to lessons learned. I mentioned earlier on, we had about 15 or 16 persons tested positive, which impacted negatively on our girls on the 20 team, which I believe would have had a good performance if we didn't have so much positive cases. However, I am pleased to inform the general public that, on the contrary, our under 20 boys who last tested yesterday, the entire staff and players who are traveling, 38 of them, everyone tested and they tested negative. So it means that we've learned from the mistakes of the previous one. And so that is the kind of opportunities I'm talking about that COVID is providing for associations and individuals and administrations, and we must be able to identify more of those opportunities as we move forward.
Mm-hmm. Quite a bit there, Mr. Joseph, but it's good to hear that your virtual meeting had probably more participation than when you do have a physical meeting, it appears, because with over 60 people involved in that, it means that that has to be a record in terms of participation.
Yeah. I recall, like I said to you, we struggle sometimes when we would have physical meeting of the association. However, persons were able to sit in the living room, in the bedroom, in the veranda, or wherever, in the vehicle, and participate in a very important exercise without having to move anywhere far to do so. And I will say to you, while we do not want to just be looking at persons through a screen, I think what it also will allow for associations to do is to identify additional savings to invest directly in the sport. This sport is really about the players. And so if we can create these savings, we can invest more in the player and the player development, the coaches, the referees and their development, the club administrators and their development.
Okay, I want to get into some the age group, because you mentioned about the under 20 leaving, but let me just get Rudy and Sylvan is saying, can every GFA team can they have a medical staff and a general manager as well moving forward?
Well, it is something that's required under the club licensing agreement. The club licensing regulation. So the person asking that, what I want to say to them, it is a requirement to be able to receive your club licensing. Your club license. And as we speak about that, we are seeking to reactivate the club license body who are supposed to ensure that the members who are part of the GFA and receiving funds from FIFA are in fact adherent to those, because we have an obligation as an association to speak to FIFA and to provide them with facts. And the information we provide to FIFA and CONCACAF must be consistent with the truth on the ground. So yes, there is, as part of the requirement, each member should have a general manager. Each club should have a coaching staff, technical staff. They should have a functioning executive, one preferably that is functioning not once a year, but meeting quarterly, monthly, or otherwise. And yes, as they rightfully said, all aspects of football should be considered by each club in the GFA.
Okay, and you mentioned that the under 20 boys, so it appears that even though there wasn't football, that you had GFA national teams in training, they are offered to the Dominican Republic for competition.
Yeah, they are going there. I want to use the opportunity now to congratulate the technical staff of the GFA, led by Coach Mike Finley and Technical Director Jerry Alexis, in that Anthony Modest, Jake Rennie, Desmond Noel, during the period where competition was suspended, they were still able to go different parts of the country and do scouting for talent and to identify the best players. I think it was 60 players they started with, and they brought it down now to the final 20. And I must publicly thank the three of them for the tremendous efforts they put into those sessions to identify the best talents we had. It would have been nice for our U20 boys to be playing football leading up to them traveling tomorrow, but that was not possible. But we were able to get permission to have special sessions. And I understand also that these coaches had given each of the individual plans to work with, even when they were not in a team session.
Okay. We have three other issues, important issues I want us to discuss, Cheney. I know time is very short on us, but one has to do with, and if probably we can, this is probably the shortest of the three, the briefest I should say, has to do with the budget consultation. It's the first for the GFA in terms of having a budget consultation in preparation for the financial report.
It's not the first, but it is the first time we put in the kind of emphasis that we're putting on it. The responsibility of the budget is really the General Secretary and the Secretariat to propose to the Executive Committee, who then present to the General Council for approval. However, I must give credit to the Secretariat and the effort they have put into the budget preparation. Our budget will be presented to the General Council in November. And I will say to you that not only different departments within the GFA Secretariat has been working towards ensuring that the information provided to the executive is accurate or realistic. They have also engaged the committees, some of the standing committees. I know for sure the referees committee has been meeting. I know the technical committee has had like about 4 or 5 meetings in the last month. I know the women's committee has also been meeting, and I believe competition has also been meeting. But apart from that, you have the finance and marketing committee, which is playing an integral role with some very qualified professionals involved. And then after all of that takes place, then there will be some additional meetings and or consultation, as you may call it, with the executive to finalize it. But all of that is influenced by, first of all, our calendar of events for next year. It is one thing I have been pushing, and I'm hopeful that sometime in the near future, we will embrace it as an association. I believe those one-year budget is affecting our ability to think far, because we are planning and budgeting for 1 year every year. I believe the time has come for the Grenada Football Association to do 4-year budget cycles, so that we can plan further ahead, and that we can not only know where we want to go and how much it will take to get there, but we would also be able to have consistency in training. So for example, if you had a proper 4-year budget, it means that if you have in mind your national teams are going to consistently be training year-round, you can plan accordingly to make sure that the budget, in fact, is in place for those teams. The same applies with your national teams. And if you ask me, Michael, and to the viewers, for those who don't know, part of the reason why the Grenada Football Association has not been consistently participating in games during the FIFA window was simply because we were not doing long-term planning. So 90% of our games we have been playing prior to CONCACAF coming with the CONCACAF Nations League and other competition. It was pretty much you realize you have a competition next month, and a neighboring country, whether it's Trinidad or Barbados or St. Vincent, say, oh, by the way, can we play a game? No, that's not how it should be done. In fact, I am one of those who still believe that, and discussions have started initially, whereby I would like to see the Grenada Football Association to be the first association to bring an African country to the Caribbean as a result of us planning properly ahead of just these 1 year budget cycles, as I indicated. And you can mark my words, if I'm wrong, it is something that I would like to see happen.
All right. I'll mark your word, and hopefully you will be around. We're going on now to time again, pushing on, so we need to get it again going. It was on this day, around this time, about 3 weeks ago, that Grenadian FIFA referee Rion Radix made history, as it considered refereeing, officiating in his biggest game of his career, United States versus Jamaica, right here in Austin, Texas. But Cheney, you have been one who was front and center on social media, defending the criticism labeled by a section of the U.S. media on Rion Radix. First of all, certainly congratulations to Rion, and you one who was on the program a few months ago, predicting and making the sort of prediction in terms of Rion Radix and his ascendancy in officiating. But why you thought it was necessary, as not just president of the Grenada Football Association, but as Cheney Joseph, a former national player and one who follows the game, had to really make your views known on social media?
Okay, before we go there, let me first say to Rion Radix, wherever you are now, if you are watching, listening, you have done exceptionally well in that game, USA versus Jamaica. I take on board, without any apology, the fact that the local competition in Grenada is still amateur. I take on board the fact that until we can improve our domestic football to the level we might be affecting you. However, I want you to know that 90 minutes you did in that game, Jamaica versus the US, was exceptional. I also want you to know that what you did was not just for yourself and the Grenada Football Association, but also for the country, because there were more than 30 million people viewing that game worldwide, and Grenada was literally being featured, whether or not the name Grenada was being called, Grenada was being featured for a minimum of 95 minutes. And I want to say to you, continue to do the good work you have done. I have no apology in saying also that Rion Radix is one of the best in the Caribbean. And I have no apology in saying, except the powers that be who can make the decision, decides that he's not yet ready. But I have consistently seen, and I believe I have a good knowledge of football. And I will not hesitate to say that Rion, from the matches I've seen, is one of the best the Caribbean has at this point in time. Having said that, I was very much disappointed to hear what I thought was an insistency on the part of these guys on the media, using the opportunity rather than to entice and encourage us to enjoy a game. They were trying to, in my opinion, humiliate him. I don't want to accuse no one of being racist, but it came across xenophobic. I got the feeling somehow it's like you don't belong. And FIFA and CONCACAF has consistently been promoting, in fact, the UN also has been promoting, we belong. And so I'm saying that his comments, or their comments, sorry, was unwarranted. And hence the reason, after watching the game, and even though the incident took place within first 5 minutes of the game, while let's just say if it was for some reason a little bump in the road with his performance, they consistently spoke about him, not in a favorable manner, but almost humiliating him for the entire remaining minutes of the game. Two comments that really I took offense to, two particular comments. One, I heard them say, well, thank God he got it right this time. He might be able to ride out in a bicycle. Otherwise, if he didn't get it right, he would have to be finding a Volkswagen Beetle or something of the sort. How dare you? The same IFAB rules that applies to those big countries in CONCACAF applies to us. And I will say without a doubt, for those who don't know, Rayon Radix is one of the most learned individual intellectually in Grenada. And so it's not one of those fellas who I have doubts about. And between you and I, his humility, his sacrifices he made, I had a problem with how they did it. And then the next thing I was offended by was something of the sort, and I may not be able to use it word for word, by saying, oh, this is not his league. What league you from? This is not his league. I won't call these guys names. When I say I won't call them names, I wouldn't call the names they were christened with. But I will say to them that football do not need these types of people or culture if we are to take the sport serious. And I personally will use this opportunity to say, Michael, sorry for being long on this one. CONCACAF has a responsibility, not just to the associations, not just to the fans and its partners. It has a responsibility to defend also its match official. And when people like that get on like that, CONCACAF should be heard. And I regret the fact that I have heard no one speak out, letting this guy other than Sportsmark. But trust me, it's unbearable, it's unforgiving. And the reality is, I don't care what it costs me as an individual. I will say anytime I see these types of things, I will speak out on it.
Any formal protests by the Grenada Football Association or referees or whatever? Any formal?
Well, no, I don't think it makes any sense at this point in time. But I think, the message has gone out there. And I think many people have, whether silently or otherwise, recognized that the guy's comments were an insult not to Grenada. It was an insult to the Caribbean. And so those of us in administration and football who don't see it so, I always use what Morris Bishop said. If you're not prepared to defend yourself when you see someone else is being attacked, it means somewhere along the line, you will be next. And so I am in nobody's backyard. Sorry for saying so. And I have no reason to feel worried about this comment because I believe it is an appropriate one. However, I wish many more persons within the Caribbean would have spoken out against that, persons in football administration.
Before I go on to my last one, hopefully get it inside of time, I just want to read a comment here from Gerald Sincere, who was on my program some time ago, and he says, while I have
say hello.
Yeah, and he says, while I have my reservations for mandatory vaccinations, I am cognizant of the fact that some businesses, sporting events, and recreational activities are potentially super spreaders. And as a result, I see merit in GFA's decision. Cheney, my final comment, and is a nice segue to my comment here, because I see a question here. Cadella Henry Victor is asking, Mr. President, do the GFA have anything in place for players when they get injured during competitions, meaning any therapists to assist players who have been traumatized and are unable to return for playing football? Which kind of a nice segue into my final question. Well, not question, but it has to do, Cheney, with former national player, coach himself, Andrew Brother Monroe. Okay. What can you tell us the latest on Andrew Brother Monroe?
I think, in fairness to the person who just asked the question, I will say to them, yes, we are getting there, but we're getting there slow. However, the GFA, through this budget consultation, is also going to be introducing an injury fund for all our clubs. We are going to do that, and every year we're going to add to the amount to ensure, even though it's amateur, and we believe that the clubs they are representing has a responsibility, we are going to put in place an injury fund. It was approved by the executive already, by the way, for players who may be injured. But we also, are working towards encouraging all clubs to have those physiotherapists. But Grenada, again, doesn't have many of those, but we will train persons, whether it's to be masseurs or, persons along that line. Talking about Andrew Monroe, a very dear friend of mine, and I want to apologize for not recognizing the loss of Douglas Lewis, a good former teammate of mine. So forgive me for waiting so late to mention it. And so to the Lewis family, the St. Patrick, River Sally to be exact, Hard Rock, Latas, again, it was hard seeing him being laid to rest, but he remains strong and dear to us in football. Brother is a good friend of mine, but also has served Grenada in every aspect of the game. He's coached at under 15 boys and girls, under 17 boys and girls, under 20 boys and girls, senior boys and girls. So he has coached every single national team Grenada has. He has played for many years for Grenada. He has captained the Grenada national team. And at this point in time, he's going through not the best of health, even though I will say to you and to the general public, I had the chance of speaking with him Saturday and Monday. And it's the strongest I've heard him since I first visited him. And so I am just telling God, thank you for the miracles he's working on, brother. And I'm hoping for a speedy recovery. I am still hopeful that he will, beat all odds and rebound strong. But I want to use this opportunity here to say to every single person who have known brother, every single person who have been touched by him, whether it's a player, the parent, I've read postings about him. I want to use tonight as an opportunity to make a request. And Michael, I'll start with you and I. I'm just asking the Grenadian public, those who are employed or can afford, for $1, each of you, just $1. If 70,000 of us was to give $1 to Andrew Monroe, and you in the diaspora, just $1. I'm not asking you for more. If we can all just give $1, and I will ask the GFA to consider being the organization to receive it. Just go donate $1 in the name of Andrew Monroe, and we will give account monthly on any amount we receive. Michael, I'm asking you to join me in making a commitment, just $1, to make sure that our brother is being treated good while he's alive and not wait to do a eulogy or any other thing. I want him around. We want him around. And I believe if we can raise some additional funds, some of his challenges, we can work towards him overcoming them. I would like for him to be able to see a specialist in the US, but he doesn't have a US visa. If someone is hearing or listening and can also influence the process whereby he will get through with a confirmed appointment somewhere in the US and a visa to get the necessary medical attention needed, we would have done him well.
All right. Thank you very much. And it's something we'll follow up on, Cheney. Probably will want to do a little more and say a little more about it in a future program. But I think it's something that is well deserving. Finally, there's a comment here, Glenn Robertson. They're excellent therapists at the stadium. Mr. Mario Christopher, Devon, Mr. Worm, we need to introduce ice baths for our national athletes, even if we use a drum of ice. And she says, great idea about a medical injury fund from Glennis Roberts. Roberts. I want to thank you very much, Cheney, and all those who contributed and be part of the program. It's nice hearing, from you folks, and I'm certain that the president has provided quite an insight, and as usual, quite provokeful at times, his thoughts, especially on the issue of Rio Radix. I know how emotional he's about it. I want to thank you once again. Yes, Sister Glennis Roberts, thank you very much. Glenn Alexander? Yes, okay. So it seems as if we'll get some traction in that, what you're speaking about, Cheney, regarding the contribution. We'll see how we can set up something that, can ensure that what you're advocating for will be a reality. Thank you very much, Mr. Joseph.
You're welcome, and all the best.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, so that's Mr. Cheney Joseph in Grenada. That's the president of the Grenada Football Association. He's also the first vice president of the Grenada Olympic Committee. Hopefully, we will get him sometime in the future to speak about his new sojourn with the Grenada Olympic Committee. As I said, the program is always available for folks who want to be part of the program. Thank you very much, Glennis. Jenny, it seems as if Glennis will make the first pledge of $50. Certainly it will go a long way. Thank you very much, Sister Glennis Roberts, and I'm certain that others will want to make their contribution. So Jenny will set up everything, and we'll hear from folks where they where they will where they will be able to make that contribution. Folks, on Saturday at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, we should have another program. Hopefully, we have the president this time of the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Football Federation. We'll confirm whether or not we will have him, Mr. Carl Dixon. So we'll be talking football again. This time we'll be going to St. Vincent and the Grenadines. We'll confirm within the next 24 hours about the availability and about that. I want to thank you for being on the program, and continue to support sports, continue to support our sportsmen and sportswomen, as well as our administrators. We think that it's key that we get our administrators thinking, in the same boat, okay? Thinking in the same boat. Thank you very much, and pleasure's mine, and hope to see you on Saturday. Until then, I'm Michael Bascom. Good evening.